Hey guys, welcome back. So we're getting ready to cut the car, cut these wheel wells open to put the bigger tires on. And we are having a tough time. So getting ready for this, we wanted to set our ride height. Let me show you how we did that, or kind of what we're doing. So essentially, I want the car to sit like a normal Miata. They sit slightly higher in the back than they do in the front, which is fine. And that's how I want this car to be. It used to sit a lot higher in the back because I basically ran a 24-inch tall slick drag radial. And I want to get it to sit better this time. However, so I basically need the back to come down, but I'm putting an actual bigger tire on the back. So this means the back of the car needs to be a lot lower before you put a big tire on it. And so we did some math to figure that out. And I'll show you. Actually, it's in an Excel sheet. I'll show you in a minute. It's kind of boring, but basically I made an Excel sheet and it told me that I needed to get the back to a 3.35 pinch weld. I know what you're thinking, that's too much, and it is. We didn't actually do this. But these tires are not as large in diameter as the 22.8 that 949 says. When they say you can only go down to a 4-inch pinch weld, that's assuming a 22.8. These are only 22 tall. So I can go another 0.4 inches just because the tire's smaller diameter. So that would put me at like a 33.6. And we ended up at a 33.5. So we're basically a tenth under. I can't imagine that's going to hurt. And there's other reasons too. But anyway, we ended up at about a 3.5. And let's see, I don't know if I wrote it down. But our camber sucks. Yeah, it's worse than this. I haven't wrote it down. We're at like, I think we're around -2 degrees of camber, which is, I don't know if I should laugh or be sad or what, but we basically don't know what we're doing. So we're kind of screwing this up a little. We shortened the control arms to fix our camber, but we didn't do that. Well, we did that and it looked like it worked, but what we failed to do was get the, we didn't roll the car backwards and forwards and unload the suspension, and I knew better. I did bounce it around and stuff, but I should have actually rolled it back and forth, and I didn't do that. That cost me ½ degree right there, more or less. Oops. But I mean, we got adjusters. That's not the end of the world. But I didn't have the car at ride height. Now, I had it pretty low. But I had been, I don't know, I guess I was just putting it off that I needed to actually do it the hard way and calculate what this should be. I've been kind of, I knew it was low, but I didn't know where I was going to be. So I actually did the math, and it turns out I was off. The car was originally sitting at basically 4 3/8. This is where we were at. And that's pretty low on the pinch weld, but I knew I could go lower, and I knew I needed to. But I thought I was only going to go down 3/8 of an inch. But then I figured all this tire stuff out and realized I needed to go down to about 3.5. That's a lot. And that threw all the camber off. And obviously now looking back, what I should have done was get the car to the correct ride height and then modify the control arms to do the camber. That's probably what I should have done. Right now, and we still haven't checked this either, but we're assuming that the factory adjusters are going to allow us to dial that 2 degrees of camber out. And we don't actually know if that's true. And if it doesn't work, then I guess I'm buying another set of control arms and doing this again. So that's our plan if that doesn't work. So, okay, that's kind of frustrating, but moving on. Our camber is still off. I still need to adjust it, but I'm not worried about that right now. I checked the toe just to make sure it was close. This side's towed in a tiny bit, and the other side's basically right around 0 or maybe towed out a touch. But they're close. They're not like really bad, egregious vocabulary word. So we decided to figure out where we're gonna cut. And what we decided was this tire's 22 tall, and the big ones are 26. And one of the biggest mistakes I've been making the whole time, I kept thinking that these were 24 and that we were going to a 26. And that's not true. What's true is that the car had a 24 on it, but these aren't it. These are street tires. My old slicks were 24 tall, like 23.9. For some reason, we've been thinking about that the whole time. And every time I put these tires on the car, I think, oh, I've only got to clear another inch. It's not true. These are 22s and I'm going to 26. So radius-wise, I got to clear 2 more inches. And that's why these big slicks never fit worth a crap. And that means we got more sheet metal work to deal with than I originally thought. So as you can see, let me change the camera. Yeah. Here's a better view. You can really tell that we're cutting a lot of metal out of this. I'll show you another mistake, because this is my first time doing any of this. So here's another mistake we made. Notice this blue line, and then that line is different. I haven't done it on the other side yet, but basically I had the car sitting at ride height, which I had to do to get this curve established. Because as you can tell, it's obviously when it's not sitting at the correct ride height, you couldn't do that. So I had the car sitting at ride height, and I drew a mark 3 inches from this edge, but not this edge, because this edge is not the same as the middle of the tire. So I actually tried to go off of this part of the tire, which is a pain in the butt, but I did it all the way around. And then I just drew a straight line down. Well, as you can see, my straight line, the car was sitting, because the back is lower. Now the back's not going to be lower when I put the big tires on, but the back was lower in this example. So basically the front's higher, the back's lower. So the car was sitting like this, and I drew a straight line. I actually used a bubble level to do it. But because the car was sitting crooked, now when the car is level on my lift, presuming it's level, it's probably close, now that's not straight. Luckily, I didn't cut this yet. But it's the same on both sides. So there's a mistake that I just caught. As you can see, I got some alcohol. I'm basically just going to wipe off that mark and redraw it. And no big deal. We'll have to do the same thing to the other side. But really, the takeaway, let's see. Let's finish. We almost covered everything. Oh, let's squeak this camera in here. So, let's see if I can get this to work. Here's the clearance between the coilover and the axle. Hopefully that shows up. Let's see. There we go. Now, it might look like those two things are touching in the camera. That's because they are. Our clearance sucks. Yeah. Those two are touching. Let's see. I checked when you lift it up, you can put about 20 or 30 thou between the two when it's sitting at ride height, but they actually do touch. It's not bad. I can still spin the adjuster, but it is bumping. So we're pretty tight there. Yeah, it's just kind of how it goes. This is way more work than I was hoping it was going to be, trying to get these big tires to fit. I almost could say I regret it. I've actually considered buying smaller tires just to make this easier. But I'm going to move forward. Sometimes, I started looking, I was like, hey, I looked up some cars that make 1,000 horsepower in a Miata. There ain't a lot of them. They're all V8s, but there are a few Miatas that make 1,000 horsepower. This is the tire they run. Is that slick, that 26 by 10. So I think I'm on the right track. I just got to do the work. Funny enough, I actually found somebody that just a few minutes ago. I didn't really look into it. I just did like a Google picture, but I clicked the link. Some guy's running 1,000 horsepower with a twin turbo V8 with that tire, and he's running the same rear end I am, the 488 IRS suspension. So that was surprising. I know some guys go solid axle when they make big power. But anyway, this is trying to decide if we're going to cut this tonight or just come back tomorrow and do it. I'm having my reservations. The fact that I marked this wrong and I was about to start cutting and I just happened to notice, like, hey, that line's not vertical. Luckily, in this case, that cutting, I would have just had to go back and cut more, so it wouldn't have been a mistake that wasn't fixable. But if it had been the other way, then that would be a mistake that I can't easily fix. So we'll think about it. I think we're just going to knock off for the night and finish this up, start cutting tomorrow. But we're actually at the point where it's time to cut metal. And I've got a bad feeling that there is more work to do. Here's what the inside of this looks like. I'm not sure if this is going to... Actually, I'm not even sure if this is going to be high enough. I'm not sure about that corner or this edge over here, because we're cutting so far up. That line, I can't really show you guys. That mark is so far up the fender that you would run into this metal in here too. That would have to be higher. Yeah, I know this isn't focusing, but this whole curve here into that floor, this floor is basically where that mark is. So this whole curved area is going to have to come out of there too to have clearance. So basically I'm probably going to cut the skin right there, and that piece will probably come off, and then there's going to be another piece of metal behind it that's also got to get cut or hammered or something. So it's going to turn into a bit of a project. We never did figure out a good thing to do here, so at this point I'm just planning to cut it and then go from there. We may just weld a flange and then deal with it. There's it may just be a lack of knowledge on my part, but I don't know an elegant way to do this that's going to look good, because the factory rolls this metal over and puts a flange. I just don't know of an elegant way to do that. They used multiple, like this is multiple pieces of steel. It's kind of hard to see, but there's at least two or three pieces there. So we're just going to cut it, and then we'll probably stick a flange there and weld it, and I don't know. We'll come up with something. We don't have an answer right now, but it's not my favorite thing to do, but sometimes you just have to move forward with a plan, even though you don't have everything figured out. It's my boss at work has this saying that I hate, and it says something like, perfect is the enemy of good enough, or something like that. You know, the point is, if you got something good enough, roll with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I really don't like that on this car. I do like to get a lot of stuff just right, but yeah, we gotta get rolling. This will never get done if we don't get to work. We got our control arms modded. Hopefully that's done. But we at least did it. Whether they're going to be the correct size or not is to be determined. But we at least completed the task. And we got all this marked out. So basically, our goal was to get these cut this weekend. But we're just going to cut them tomorrow. But they are marked. I'll go ahead and do this remark here. I'm going to do that on both sides. So they're literally, the final marks will be on the car. And it'll be ready to cut tomorrow, as long as we decide that that's the thing to do. So I guess that's all for now. And guess I'll talk to y'all later. Y'all take it easy.